Time's up, Vincent.
For decades, Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman were one of Hollywood's most unexpected and most beloved couples. He was the sharp-tongued, larger-than-life actor with a voice nobody could mistake. She was the brilliant, fearless performer who could steal a scene with one look. Together, they made people laugh. They built careers that lasted generations. They raised a family. And for more than 40 years, they showed the world that love does not always look like a perfect Hollywood romance. But then, in 2012, something happened that shocked their fans. Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman announced that they were separating. After more than 3 decades of marriage. After children. After shared homes, shared friends, and shared history. The couple who had seemed inseparable was no longer living the same life. For many people, that would have been the end of the story. A divorce. A public battle. A painful silence. But Danny and Rhea did something different. They did not turn their separation into a scandal. They did not destroy each other in interviews. They did not become strangers. Instead, they remained connected. And that is why their story still fascinates people today. Because Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman did not simply have a famous relationship. They built a partnership that survived even after the relationship changed. Their story began in the early 1970s. Rhea was watching a play in which Danny was performing. He was not yet the Hollywood star people know today. He was still working his way through the unpredictable world of acting. But something about him caught her attention. Rhea later described their meeting as immediate and unforgettable. They began dating. And in 1982, they married. At the time, neither of them could have known how much their lives were about to change. Danny's career exploded with Taxi. Then came films like Romancing the Stone, Twins, Matilda, and Batman Returns. Rhea became a television icon through Cheers, earning praise for her unforgettable role as Carla Tortelli. They were not just a celebrity couple. They were 2 working actors who understood the pressure of auditions, long hours, rejection, fame, and the strange demands of the entertainment industry. That shared understanding mattered. Because Hollywood relationships often struggle when one person's career becomes bigger than the other's. But Danny and Rhea both had their own success. They supported each other. They built a home. And they raised 3 children, Lucy, Grace, and Jacob. For years, they appeared together at events, premieres, and award shows. They seemed comfortable with each other in a way that did not feel staged. There was humor. There was history. There was a sense that they knew exactly who the other person was. But behind every red carpet photograph was a real life that the public could not fully see. There were work schedules, parenting responsibilities, different projects, different personalities, and the everyday pressures that every long-term couple understands. Fame can make people assume that a relationship is either perfect or broken. But real relationships are rarely that simple. They are built through thousands of ordinary moments. Shared meals, private jokes, long conversations, disagreements, compromises, and the decision to keep showing up for each other when life becomes difficult. Danny and Rhea's relationship lasted through career highs, changing public attention, and the constant demands of Hollywood. They also built a family that became the center of their lives. Their children grew up around actors, writers, directors, and cameras. But they also grew up with 2 parents who understood the importance of home. That family connection would become even more important later. Because even the strongest relationships can change over time. And when Danny and Rhea announced their separation, fans wanted to know what had gone wrong. The truth was never turned into a dramatic public confession. Neither Danny nor Rhea built a media circus around it. They protected their family. They protected their children. And they protected something that many couples lose during a breakup. Respect. That respect would become the reason their story did not end in 2012. It simply became a different kind of love story. When a famous couple separates, the public usually expects conflict. Lawyers, headlines, accusations, a long list of people taking sides. But Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman chose another path. They separated in 2012. They briefly reconciled. Then they separated again in 2017. But despite living apart, they remained legally married. More importantly, they remained part of each other's lives. That is the detail many people do not understand. A separation does not always mean hatred. It does not always mean a family has been destroyed. Sometimes, It means two people are trying to find a healthier way to live while still honoring everything they built together. Rhea has spoken publicly about the fact that she and Danny are still close. They share children. They share grandchildren. They share decades of memories that cannot simply be erased. And even after their romantic relationship changed, their bond as family remained. For Danny, family has always seemed to be one of the most important parts of life. Behind the loud characters and comedy roles is a man who has spent decades connected to the same people, the same creative partners, the same friends, and most importantly, the same family. That does not mean their separation was easy. No long relationship changes without pain. After more than 40 years together, Danny and Rhea had to learn how to live differently. They had to adjust to a new reality. But they did not allow the public to turn that reality into a spectacle. In a world where celebrity breakups are often used for entertainment, their quietness became powerful. They did not need to explain every private detail. They did not need to prove who was right. They did not need to make the other person look bad. They simply continued showing up for their family. That is why people still see them together at important events. That is why they can speak warmly about each other. That is why fans continue to wonder whether they might someday reunite. But the most important truth is not whether they live under the same roof. The most important truth is that they never treated their shared history as something disposable. Danny and Rhea built a life together. They built careers. They raised children. They faced the pressure of fame. And when their relationship changed, they did not erase everything that came before it. That is rare. It is also deeply human. There is something especially powerful about the way they handled their separation. They did not pretend that their marriage had never mattered. They did not rewrite their past to make the ending easier to explain. Instead, they allowed the relationship to evolve. For some people, that can be difficult to understand. The public often wants a simple answer: together or apart, happy or unhappy, love or no love. But Danny and Rhea's story does not fit into those easy categories. Their lives remained connected because their family remained connected. Their children were adults, but family does not stop being important once children grow up. Birthdays still happen. Holidays still happen.
Grands-children arrivent.
Important moments still need to be shared. And when people have spent decades building a life together, there is no switch that suddenly turns all of that history off. That does not mean they are pretending nothing changed. It means they chose not to let change become cruelty. They chose to protect the people around them. They chose calm over public drama. They chose privacy over headlines. And in Hollywood, that is not always easy. A dramatic breakup can create attention. A public fight can create endless stories. But Danny and Rhea gave the media very little to use against each other. They stayed focused on their family. They stayed focused on work. And they continued treating one another with dignity. Many people watching their story may understand that love is not always simple. Sometimes love means staying married. Sometimes it means living separately. Sometimes it means choosing peace instead of fighting. And sometimes it means accepting that a person can remain important to you even when the relationship no longer looks the way it once did. For Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman, the years after separation became proof that a relationship can change without becoming cruel. But their story also has another reason people connect with it. Because beyond the marriage, there was a friendship. A friendship built before fame, before awards, before the public knew their names. And that friendship may be the reason they never truly disappeared from each other's lives. Today, Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman are still connected by something far deeper than public appearances. They are connected by a lifetime. They met when they were young actors trying to find their place in the world. They built their careers side by side. They became parents. They became grandparents. They watched each other grow into the people they are today. That kind of history cannot be replaced. And perhaps that is why their story feels so different from many Hollywood relationships. Danny and Rhea never needed to sell the public a perfect image. They were funny, honest, sometimes unconventional. And even when their marriage changed, they did not pretend the past had never happened. Instead, they continued to treat each other as family. Their children have grown up watching that example. Not an example of perfection, but an example of maturity. Of two people who understood that ending one chapter does not have to mean destroying the entire book. In Hollywood, people often measure relationships by one question. Did they stay together forever? But Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman's story asks a different question. Can two people remain kind to each other after life changes? Can they protect their family? Can they honor the years they shared? Can they choose respect when anger would be easier? For Danny and Rhea, the answer appears to be yes. Their relationship may no longer look like it did in the 1980s or 1990s, but it still exists. In family gatherings, in shared memories, in the way they speak about each other, and in the quiet decision not to turn a private separation into a public war. That is why the title of their story is not the end. It is not the scandal. It is not the breakup that destroyed everything. It is something more complicated, and perhaps more meaningful. Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman never let go of the family they created. They never let go of the respect that carried them through decades of fame. And they never let the public decide what their relationship was supposed to become. Their story also matters because it challenges the way people think about love. For many people, love is only considered successful if it ends in one specific way. A couple stays together forever. They live in the same house. They appear happy in every photograph. They never change. But real life is more complicated. People change. Needs change. Priorities change. And sometimes the healthiest choice is not to force a relationship to remain exactly the same. Sometimes the healthier choice is to create a new kind of connection. One built on honesty. One built on boundaries. One built on mutual respect. Danny and Rhea's story does not offer a perfect Hollywood ending. It offers something more realistic. Two people who shared decades of love and history, then found a way to continue being family even after their marriage changed. That kind of connection takes maturity. It takes patience. It takes the ability to look beyond anger and remember the people who matter most. Their story also reminds viewers that public figures have private lives. Fans may want answers. They may want to know whether Danny and Rhea will ever reunite. But that decision belongs only to them. What the public can see is the respect they have maintained, the warmth they have shown, and the family bond they have protected. Maybe that is the real lesson behind their story. Love does not always follow the rules people expect. It does not always stay in one shape forever. But when two people choose kindness, loyalty, and respect, a bond can survive even the hardest changes. Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman may not be living the same life they once did, but their connection remains one of Hollywood's most unusual and most enduring love stories. If you enjoyed this documentary, please like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments. Do you think Danny and Rhea's story proves that love can change without disappearing? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.